I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown. We have Michael Knott, who is a Competence Development Manager for First Capital Connect. Michael and I met in Cuba, of all places, about 6 years or so ago. The best round of golf I've ever had, which we certainly walked differently at the end of it with the amount of beverages consumed, and we had a great holiday in Cuba together, meeting there, and very like-minded. Although Michael lives in the Midlands, he's a Hull City supporter, proud to be a Hull City supporter. So rings close to home. But thanks for joining us today, Michael. Really pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, hi,
Happy
Michael.
to be here. Hi, thanks for having me.
So, give us some insight into how work life has changed for you the past 5 or 6 weeks, Michael.
So, interesting. So obviously, we are very much a key service. So, we are having to keep the trains running. And so life continues, not as normal, but there is a certain normalcy to it. We stepped down the timetable in 2 phases. Once the lockdown started, we moved from a normal timetable. We then moved to a Saturday service, where we run approximately 80% of the trains on a Saturday that we do during the week. And then we stepped down again to run a Sunday service. We're now running what we essentially call an enhanced Sunday service. We're running approximately 60% of the trains that we would normally run on a Monday to Friday, but we're making some additional train services as well. So it's not just a regular Sunday service. We've been in contact with basically every single NHS local authority and provider along our route. We've asked them when their staff start work, when they finish work, when they need us to be stopping trains at those stations that are near any hospitals, GP surgeries, walk-in centres, whatever it may be. And on the back of that, we've sort of tailor-made the timetable a little bit to make sure that we have trains stopping at stations for key workers, because very importantly, we cannot stress it enough that we are running a service at the moment for key workers to get to and from work. It's, that's not always the case. People aren't always sticking to that, but that's why we're running a service, and it's essential that we do. Just to give you some figures, on a normal week, we will carry 5 million passengers over our network. And over the last few weeks, that has been reduced to between about 150 and 200,000 a week. So we are carrying approximately 2 to 3% of the passengers that we normally carry, and yet we're still running a 60% of the train service. So we're running a very thorough service, and it is all it's all in aid of key workers to get them to and from work.
That's very admirable. I wasn't aware of that. And that's 5 million passengers a week. How big a weight on your shoulders normally does that weigh? And with that in mind, is it an equal amount of pressure and stress, but in a different way with the current climate?
I think it's interesting because obviously for me, I deal with our drivers, and most of the so Thameslink, who I work for, we are a driver only provider. So all of our trains have a driver, and that's it. So we could have potentially 12 carriages worth of a train with up to 2,000 people on the train, and that driver is responsible for the safety of all of those passengers. And obviously, so having a team of drivers, you want to make sure that your drivers maintain their competence. If they have any incidents, they're dealt with properly. They're given a personal development plan that will allow them to become a better driver and make sure that they have as few incidents in the future as possible. So ultimately, it's the weight of responsibility is the fact that you have your drivers are running around, and their performance through their performance they're responsible for the safety of a lot of passengers. So that has diminished somewhat in the number of passengers that we're carrying. But what it's important is that we now need to make sure that the passengers that we're carrying are safe, can remain safe, and also, we are more so now concerned about the safety of our drivers. Our drivers they have to come into work. We are having to run a service. So for them to get to and from work, how are we enabling that? How are we making sure that that's safe? How are we making sure that they're safe whilst they're at work? What sort of systems can we put in place to make sure that they're not at higher risk of picking up this illness, this virus, whilst they're at work? So slightly different challenges now, I think.
Different challenges within the same sort of criteria of the business. We've seen that a lot on this show. People having to pivot within their own parameters and their own situation in order to meet the new demands and the new version of what normal is. We've seen a lot of people it's polarized people, I think, as well, where some people have got much busier because of this, and some people, it seems, have got much quieter. Whereabouts do you fall on that spectrum? How's your time?
Well, it's interesting. Me personally, I think that I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't think I'm any more busy. I don't think I'm any less busy. So, they're interesting because I'm having an opportunity to work from home several days a week. That cuts down on a certain amount of traveling around. It cuts down on a certain amount of locating my drivers, going out to different parts of the network to see to see drivers, this, that, and the other. That all takes time out of my day. So on the occasions when I'm able to work from home, I can spend the time that I would have spent traveling doing any extra work that I had. So it's kind of sort of evened itself out a little bit. And I think that some of that is good, some of that is bad. We've moved much more to contacting our drivers remotely. So instead of going to see them face to face, it will be through a video call or over the phone. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. So there are some sacrifices that we've had to make, and I think as well what's happening is that we are making some work for ourselves for when things get back to normal. We are postponing things, and there will be things that will be building up that we'll have to then address once we get back to normality, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you think many of the new working procedures and processes that you've got, do you think many of them will stick and stay now for the long term?
Interesting. I think that there will be some things that we will be able to do, definitely. And I think, very personally, in my role, I would go into the office 5 days a week. I would be, and out and about on the network as well. If I needed to go see drivers, if I needed to go if I need to go do an assessment on some drivers, or if I had to go respond to an incident, whatever it may be. At no point was I ever working from home. And it's become evident to me now over the last few weeks that there are quite a few aspects of my job that I can do at home. And I think that there are some things that I could use my time more efficiently for if I was to work from home. So I think going forward, it would be nice to think that potentially my manager, his manager, those people above me may appreciate the fact that I can use my time efficiently by working from home on occasion. And it's not going to be, all the time, but certainly I would look at it and think, one day a week, it would be very easy for me to work from home and work very efficiently in that time, and get more done than I would if I was going into the office on that day.
Yeah.
From a company point of view, definitely. I mean, we have had to change the way that we are doing assessments. We've had to change the way we deal with our drivers, and we've created a whole load of new assessments which can be accessed online. So I think that there will be, but we've found out that we're having issues with our drivers having the right IT. So they were all issued with iPads years ago, and they all have work email addresses, and we're finding out that their iPads don't work. They were never told how to use them. They don't have access to their work email addresses, and I think that this has highlighted some of those issues which will have to be looked at. But having said that, once we get those things sorted, we have been able to produce assessments that we can email to our drivers, and they can do these assessments in their own time. There are tools that we now have in place that will allow drivers to keep on top of their competence in a much easier way, I think. So yeah, there will be things that we can take forward, personally and from the company point of view as well.
So you've moved, assessments being one of the things, you've moved that digital now. Did that used to be a more manual version of assessments?
Yeah, so just a couple of examples, for instance. So, I mean, one of the things which we will have to reintroduce is, as it stands at the moment, we have, one of the things that we used to do, or we need to do really, is in-cab assessments. So where you go out, you see a driver and you stand in the cab with them and you watch them driving the train. So you watch them, what they're doing, you ask them questions about the route that they're driving. And it's a great way of seeing how they drive, what they're doing when they're driving, and any personal protection strategies that they have in place that can mitigate risk of safety of the line incidents. So that's a very valuable tool. One of the things that we've replaced that with at the moment is we're very lucky that we have a brand new fleet of trains, and all of our trains are fitted with little black box recorders, as you would find on an aeroplane, and we can remotely access all of the data that is stored on those drives. So I can identify a train that one of my drivers has driven. I can download all the data from that journey, and from that data I get a very, very clear picture as to what they've done during that journey, because it records every single time they move something, push a button, change anything in the car. It is all recorded. So I can see all of the speeds that they're going, when they put the brake in, how fast they accelerate, when they open the doors, what they're looking at on the monitors. I can see forward facing cameras, so I can see all the signals in front of them. It's a fantastic tool, and that can all be accessed remotely. So that's something that we've been using a lot of, so that we can assess our drivers and we can keep an eye on them to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing, and importantly, pick anything up that they might be, any bad habits that they might be forming, anything that anything that they're not adhering to that they should be, and then we can get in touch with them and we can talk to them about it. So I think that's a tool that we're using more of at the moment. We would also have drivers in, and we bring them into the classroom, and they have a development day where we discuss a number of topics that are relevant to the driver's role. We ask some questions, and we fill in any gaps in their knowledge. So any skill fade that they might have had, then we can just sort of remind them of those things, and we can do that in the classroom. Well, what we've done over the last few weeks is we've written a series of quizzes, essentially. which we can now email out to our drivers. They're multiple choice quizzes. They fill them out. They get a time slot in which they have to fill out these quizzes. So the quiz is active for a certain length of time. And once they finish the quiz, they submit it. It comes back to us. The multiple choice stuff gets marked automatically. Any questions that they have wrong, we can then fill out, we can review, and then we can send them the quiz, the marked quiz back, and we can ring them up and we can say, right, okay, these are the questions that you got wrong, and we can discuss. Like I say, we can discuss the correct answers, and again, hopefully fill in some of those gaps in their knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's something that we've been able to do, and I think that that's something that we will utilise much more of going forward.
Yeah. And are you doing that through email, you say, or are you using a third-party piece of software? Or
So we're using Microsoft Forms.
Right.
So the quizzes have all been written on Microsoft Forms. So it's within. So we do it within the company. So the quiz can only be emailed to a company email address.
Mm-hmm.
So the quiz, it cannot be forwarded to an email outside of the company. All of our drivers have company email addresses. So the form, we access the form, we copy the link, we email it out to the driver, and like I say, we can set a certain number of parameters for when they can fill it in, what their time scale is, how long they have to fill it in.
Yeah.
Once they submit it, it comes straight back to the owning manager, who then will mark it, and then, like I say, and then feedback. So it's a great system, and it's something that I'm not aware of that we've used across the company at all. And it's something that I think that will get used a lot more now.
Yeah, it's a great example of just using existing software or procedures or whatever, and then taking. Okay, in your industry, you've not gone quiet, but plenty of business owners have. And so taking this opportunity with the Microsoft Forms or even just a basic email to see where the skill shortage is. You say you use the word fade, the skill fade, and then to identify it so that you can then work on those areas whilst you're quiet, or if you're up against a time deadline, and doing it now. It's a great tip, isn't it, for
definitely
any business owner. It's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think on the same vein, when I think about my partner, she is having to. So she works in a completely different industry, but she works. So she's a nurse by profession, and she works in the private sector now. She's a regional ops manager for a Lloyd's pharmacy, basically, who provide nursing in the community. And they've had a number of staff who are either isolating or whatever it may be, or are being shielded, and who aren't able to go out and see patients. They're using this time to upskill. So they're having them, they're remotely training them via Microsoft Teams, and they're teaching them to do some more admin-based roles. So they are able to catch up on some of their admin. It's a little bit different for us. It's a little bit. I'm sure that may be happening within other sectors of the company, but the drivers very much are drivers. So and we need less of them at the moment, because we are running less trains. So we do find ourselves in a situation where we have drivers sitting at home. So they're pretty much on call, but we can't have them sitting in mess rooms because we need social distancing in our mess rooms. So we need to limit the number of drivers that we have at the depots. So we have drivers sitting at home who are effectively on call. So if we need them, then we can ring them up and they can be in work within 30 minutes. Yeah. But whilst they're sitting at home, there isn't really anything that we can have them to do. We can have them doing, unfortunately.
So how's you mentioned your partner there? How is the work-life balance going then? Like being at home 5 days a week at the moment. You've already said you want it to go to 1 day.
It's interesting. I mean, it's been really useful for me. It's been very helpful for me because she is used to working from home. So even before this happened, she worked from home probably 3 or 4 days a week anyway. And essentially, the only reason she would go into work is to visit hospitals or to visit her team or essentially meetings. And these are all now being conducted again using Microsoft Teams. So she can do 100% of her work at home, but she's used to working from home. Yeah. And for someone who is not used to working from home, it's quite useful because there is someone there who is, right, come on, it's time to get up. The working day has started. And there is a certain structure to the day, which is definitely useful because I think that if it hadn't have been for that, I would have found it relatively difficult because having never done it before, I mean, even in a role where, I am responsible for my own workload. So, I have a volume of work to do and it is my responsibility to do that work. Nobody's standing there, poking me in the back saying, come on, you need to do this. But there's just something about being in work and being in that working environment that seems natural that you would do work. Whereas being at home, it seems relatively unnatural to be working. Being at home it's not, I don't associate with being in my house with doing work. So I think that would have been difficult, but like I say, luckily for me, she has shown me the way.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I do think it's a skill that you have to learn to be able to work and live in the same space. Yeah. There's a definite psychology that's needed there, and yeah, to have an expert in your midst that can say, right, it's work time, it's TV time, it's all that. Yeah, must definitely help.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because I think that you can, I think you work much more efficiently when you're at home. And what I mean in that is, if I'm to sit down at the desk and work for 2 hours, I do 2 solid hours of work with no distractions. For me to do that same 2 hours of work in an office environment where there are distractions, there are drivers coming into the office all the time asking questions. There are colleagues coming in asking questions or just generally having a chat. Do you want a coffee? Whatever it may be. That same 2 hours of work may take 3 or 4 hours to actually do.
Yeah.
So, there are other distractions. I could turn the TV on if I wanted to. I could, go grab something out the fridge. I could go for a run. I could have a sit in the garden, whatever it may be. But they're different distractions, and I think if you manage them properly, you can be very efficient with your time.
Yeah,
it's interesting because she said normally it's you're working away from home 100% of the time. Now is 50-50, right? About 50%.
Yeah, I reckon so. Yeah, it's about 50-50 at the moment. Yeah,
50-50, and then ideally, so coming out of this into whenever that might be, and however we expect that to look, do you think would be your ideal mix, Michael, in terms of percentage?
I think ideally, I would do 4 days physically in work and 1 day at home. Cool. I think that over the course of the week, I could accumulate enough kind of administrative stuff or stuff that I could do purely on my laptop for me to be able to work much more efficiently if I was able to spend a day doing that at home. I genuinely think that would benefit. It would increase the amount of work that I could do. So it would benefit me. It would benefit the company. And I think that would be a good idea. It's certainly something that I will be discussing with my manager once all of this starts to get back to normal, whatever normal will look like.
Yeah.
Phil, what would you suggest is the previous normal in terms of a percentage split, and how has that switched now?
I think I've identified. I mean, previously I was in the office 5 days a week, but there was a lot of routine in that and going through the motions. And when you take that out, and then you've got the kids in the same space, and family life going on, and then work, and you become very rationalized and very focused on what's important to each person, and how much actually needs doing in that direction. So I think what I've taken from this is that I've become very focused with my work. I ring fence time, which is agreed throughout us all. I ring fence time, and that becomes my work time. And my amount of time available to work has been reduced, certainly during the day. And I'm looking forward to that, going back to a form of normality where school happens, and so then I can go back to working pretty much school hours, but in the office. So I'll mirror the school hours, because I know I have become more efficient and more effective with the reduced amount of hours that I'm working, and hopefully continue that using different work methods and ways of doing work that have streamlined the process. So yeah, it'll be 5 days a week, but it'll be a reduced hours in each of those 5 days now.
Well, on episode 25, we interviewed Hannah and Helen from H&H, the UK's leading internal comms agency, and we put a bit of micro out, and it was covering remote working. And Phil Pond, one of our group members, he put some great information on it. It was research that was carried out in the third week of lockdown, and that research discovered that working remotely wasn't as popular as we might all kind of allude to, or that we suggest. And what was he put? He put the survey was sent to 8,000 employees, 6,517 responded. Excluded from the research were furloughed employees, regular home workers, part-time workers, and non-office-based workers. It helps to understand that of the UK population, 30% are regular home workers anyway. So, Michael, you spoke about your partner in that category. When asked what would they like to retain about their current circumstances, only 20% said they would like to work from home more, but 50% want to retain the better work-life balance they perceive they have during lockdown, which I guess you fall into that category as well. 79% of respondents said that a better work-life balance for them meant working from home 2 to 3 days a week, but also being able to work from an office 2 to 3 days a week, a 50-50 location split. The remaining 21% wanted to return to being office-based, but with social distancing observed. And then Phil said, interesting, isn't it? We've had some replies to that. So thanks to our member Phil Bond for sharing that information. I mean, normally I would suggest, would you say I think I'm about 90% working from home, 95% working from home, with the 5 or 10% going to a cafe or a location to get the change of scenery.
It's funny, isn't it? People dream for that, don't they?
Yes.
But then when the reality is given to them, it's like, oh no, this wasn't what it was supposed to be.
I must admit as well, I have to say as well, is that we don't have any kids. So I appreciate that, particularly at the moment, with the kids not being at school, that will make it exceedingly difficult. You know, the vast majority of my friends who are now find themselves working from home have kids, and I appreciate that it is difficult, particularly when both parents are working from home, but the kids are there. You know, how do they divide the responsibility for working from home? Who's looking after the kids? Who's doing everything else that needs to be done? So I appreciate that is difficult, and it's not something that we have to deal with. So it is a lot easier for us.
Okay, well, so for someone that lives in the middle of England, why are you all City supporter? Because that can't be. You can't have been at school, and when everyone thinks I'll support Tottenham or I'll be a Man U fan. It can't have been that kind of situation where you thought, I know, I'll support Hull City.
No, absolutely. Absolutely not.
The anti-glory seeker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did the opposite. I picked the worst team. No. So my family, my parents, my grandparents, aunties, uncles, cousins, all of my whole family come from a little place called Goole, up in the northeast there.
How many?
My dad.
Just put your hands up. How many fingers?
Yeah, don't worry. I wasn't actually born there, so. So my whole family are from Goole. My dad has been a Hull City fan since he was, a tiny little boy. Now my parents moved away when they were 18, so I was actually born in Birmingham. I grew up in Lancaster, and I now live in the Midlands. So I've never lived anywhere near Hull. But as a little kid, this was before the child helpline. My dad used to take me to Hull City games. So he took me to Hull City games because he was a Hull City fan. So unfortunately, he did a number on me, and I've now grown up as a Hull City fan. My dad still travels. Again, not at the moment, but he still travels over from Lancaster, which is, like I say, where I grew up, where I would say my family home is. He still travels over to Hull for the home games, and I travel up my train when I can to meet him at football games. So I've been a Hull City fan all my life, and the last 10, 12 years have been incredible. Really, in terms of the most successful time in the club's history, despite what some of the fans think of the owners, they have overseen a very successful period in the club's history. So it's been interesting. It's I've been some interesting matches. I've seen some interesting things, but but I think the thing is with most football fans. Even though I've now lived in the Midlands, I've lived in the Midlands now I've lived near Leicester for probably 20 years. The easiest thing in the world would be for me to be a Leicester City fan. I just can't do it. I cannot bring myself to change my allegiance. I think that's such a very unique thing with football. Once you have a team, that is your team.
Yeah, I think being Hull City fan too. I think there was summed up at the weekend when Match of the Day did a special show on funny, strange moments in the Premier League, and Hull City appeared when one of their players was getting headbutted by an opposing manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
Was that one Pardew?
It was Pardew. Pardew headbutting Mayer. Then there was Pearson.
I was going to say the big Bullard. Yeah.
The two, there was Jamie Bullard, and then there was them all sat on the pitch getting told off at half time in front of all the fans. It's like you could have made a whole show just out of Hull City's comedy time in the Premier League. So, yeah.
That's
but at least we've played some games in the Premier League, though. Who would have thought that?
It's an interesting story because I had the same with my dad from a 4-year-old taking me up to Middlesbrough. So I was
of course
close to Hull. I was taken further north as you were by your dad in the same way. And Hull City are the only UK football shirt I've ever worn other than Middlesbrough, and that was for the playoff final. And it was it. And that was because you might have experienced this, is that you didn't grow up in the environment that the fellow fans were brought up in. I used to travel to Middlesbrough to then experience the game and come back. Whereas where I was it was all Hull City fans. And so to experience, it was the first time I ever experienced on that playoff run, the unity that was created and felt by that football buzz, and then to win the final. I remember being there. I got my ticket 3 days before. They released some restricted.
Was this the first one? Was this the Bristol game?
It was the Bristol City game, and I got 3 days before. My mate got his hands on a restricted view seat So I'm thinking, well, at least I'll go. And I had a better seat than any of my mates that queued up for days on end. Phenomenal memories with Hull City, and yeah, just to be part of that local buzz was something I'd never experienced before.
Absolutely.
So yeah, phenomenal. Before we sign off, it goes without saying, we touched on when we started, the best round of golf. I think would we rightly agree that we both ever had? We had smoking cigars in Cuba with golf tees in the bottom of them. So as we'd hit our shots, we'd put the cigars in the grass, and we had. Do you remember the lady who came along on a golf buggy and
the French wench is I mean, probably shouldn't call her that, but that's what she's colloquially called, yeah. But I mean, you know, it's a shame. It's a shame I'm using a different phone, because I have a great snap at the end of that round of golf of the buggy with a beautiful coast in the background. You know, white sandy beaches, beautiful blue sky. You've got the lush green of the golf course, and it's a picture of the buggy. And all you can see in the buggy is an overflowing glove compartment and footwell of empty beer cans, of which I probably had one or two. I think James probably drank the vast majority of them. And apparently, everybody in the hotel knew when we'd pulled up outside the hotel, because even though they were out the back in the swimming pool, they could hear us from about 200 meters away. So I don't know what that was about.
I think that ended with us just launching the rest of the golf balls that we had off a cliff into the ocean, and running up to them, you know, like Happy Gilmore when you run up.
But I think what surprised us both about it was we both bought golf balls at the start of the round, and we thought, we're not the best golfers in the world, we'll probably need a few golf balls. And we ended up with loads of golf balls left at the end of the round. And it's like, well, I'm not taking these home with me. Right, let's hit them into the sea. How amazing is that?
Off they go. Yes, well, very happy memories, and certainly open to repeating that in the future for sure, Michael. Well,
absolutely.
Thanks for joining us today. It's been awesome to reconnect with you. I mean, these are uncertain and challenging times, and some of the positives that we're all experiencing is reconnecting with those that have joined us along our journey and brought smiles, and you're certainly one of them. So thanks for joining us.
No problem. Absolutely. You know, no issues. I think, you know, that it's a great group that you've set up on Facebook. You know, I will definitely be talking to some of my friends. I think I've got some, you know, friends in some very interesting industries that you know, it would be great to connect with. So I'll be spreading the word. I think you're doing a great job, guys. It's been lovely to catch up. And if anybody has any railway related questions, then, you know, please feel free to ask.
Brilliant.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Michael.
Michael, thanks for your time.
All right, no problem.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.